If you hold beneficial ownership in relation to a company, you should already be aware of the new Beneficial Ownership Register functionality now on the CIPC, Companies and Intellectual Property Commission's e-services platform. What you may not, however, be aware of is that the South African Revenue Service has aligned with this functionality, introducing system changes effective from 23 June 2023. To tell us more is Jashwin Baijoo. He's the Head of Strategic Engagement and Compliance at Tax Consulting SA. Thank you again, Jashwin, for joining us on the OFM Business Hour. I think a few weeks ago we did, delve into the Beneficial Ownership Register that exists on the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission's platform. But you perhaps mind providing us with a refresher for those that may have missed out on that conversation. What is this Beneficial Ownership Register?
Let's start with on the CIPC platform. All right, so your Beneficial Ownership Register is in essence a declaration that is found now on the CIPC e-services platform. And ultimately how it works is, you log into the platform, you've got a number of icons, and your beneficial ownership is the very last one. Being the most recent, was only introduced in April.
Okay. And
you then select that. All right, so once you've selected your beneficial ownership, you then need to agree to the declaration that your disclosure is true and honest, etc. And you go on to select the type of application. And you can also, at that stage, view any in progress or completed application. You go, you search your company name, either using the registration number or the enterprise details, and you proceed to look at the auto-filled information. Right? So first you make sure it's correct. And sounds very much like a tax return, right?
Yeah.
All right, once you've ensured everything is correct, your auto-filled page is completed, you check everything is in order, and you go to your owner listing page, you say select new. Now, I think at this juncture, it's very important to actually note what is beneficial ownership, right? Who qualifies as a beneficial owner? If we look at it at a bit of a high level, from the basics, what it ultimately means is any person who, in relation to a company, who either ultimately owns that company, so a direct shareholder, right, or is able to exercise effective control of that company, is a beneficial owner. Now, when we say exercise effective control of the company, let's say there is a group of companies and you hold 51% in the ultimate holding company. That holding company holds 100% of subsidiary A. Because of that relationship, you are still considered the beneficial owner in company A, in subsidiary A, because you have the ability to exercise effective control over that company. Going further, if we look at just a few examples, it would be a person that holds a beneficial interest in shares of the company. So that would be your holding company. You hold 51%, its beneficial interest in shares. Is able to exercise voting rights and direct changes? Yes, by virtue of your shares. But remember, there's a difference in classes of shares. You get shares that come with voting and participatory rights, and you get classes of shares that do not come with voting and participatory rights. And then you've got something that's a little bit more indirect, and that is if a person is able to control the voting and company decisions or direct the changes. Now, remember the difference between exercise and control. If you can exercise a voting right, you have more direct control. But if you can control the voting, as in the example I gave you, where there's a holding company at the top and a wholly owned subsidiary below it, you then have control over that, but indirectly through another entity. And then we have a bit of a broader category, which is someone who holds the power to materially influence, either directly or through a chain of control, the management of a company, legal entity, body of persons, partnership, or any other persons acting under the provisions of a trust agreement. And that is obviously where you have a trust. And, lots of wealthy individuals like to use the offshore trust option. But even though your trust is situated offshore, you are still the beneficial owner of it.
I wonder how much of a role did our grey listing contribute to the establishment of this register, or was it always in the pipeline?
Our grey listing is very recent, but if you go back to the budget review and budget speeches in 2020, yes, it was already then indicated that a strengthening of tax treatment is needed in South Africa. That predated our grey listing itself. But even at that stage, there were remedial measures being put in place to prevent blacklisting. Okay? Remember, the Financial Task Force gave the South African government a number of objectives. And if not mistaken, I think it was about 67, 68 somewhere around there. Now, the majority of those objectives were achieved, but there were 8 or 9 still outstanding. And that is how we landed on grey listing. If we look at all of the measures implemented in the last 3 months, let's just look at 3 months. We have the increased verification process on VAT registrations. We have the now streamlined process called approval international transfer for the offshoring of funds for a non-resident for any amount, and for a South African tax resident, any amount exceeding their annual single discretionary allowance of R1 million. And now we have this beneficial ownership register, which, yes, CIPC did first. And, when people think about CIPC, they always think it's more administrative than anything else. But what adds weight to this is the fact that on mid to end June, SARS said, yes, we're also doing this. You now have to declare your beneficial ownership with SARS. And that's taken the form of additional containers being added to the ITR 14 declaration, which is the annual return for companies. And you declare that in each and every beneficial owner holding more than 5%.
We'll check in with Jashwin Baijoo tomorrow on the Business Hour. He's the Head of Strategic Engagement and Compliance at Tax Consulting SA.